Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Catherine Blouin, so I am with Oussama Aligad and Rachel Mayers, the co-founder and co-editor of the blog Everyday Orientalism. And we are very happy today to host our first Everyday Orientalism talk. Today we're hosting, and we're going to learn from Fatma Keshk. It's a great pleasure, Fatma, to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Before I introduce you, I'll just do a bit of housekeeping. So we are currently recording this talk. We will post it on YouTube and send you the link if ever you want to send it to other people afterwards. We should do so sometime next week. For today's talk, we're asking you to keep your cameras and microphones off for now, for the whole duration of the event. We're also asking you to refrain from chatting during the talk, because we're aware that for some people this is kind of disruptive. You'll have plenty of time to comment and ask questions after Fatma's talk, and you can do so in the chat. I guess by now everyone is a Zoom expert, so I don't need to give you any more detail regarding the technicalities of our meeting today. So without further ado, I will introduce our guest for today, Fatma Keshk, who is joining us from Cairo. As you can see, my office is freezing. I hope that Cairo is a bit warmer, but maybe too warmer, I don't know. Anyhow, you are in Egypt and I'm in Toronto. So Fatma is an Egyptologist and field archaeologist. She worked on several archaeological sites with many archaeological institutions in Egypt and abroad, and she's been doing so since 2008. She's the former head for the Archaeology and Architecture Department at Kotnat at the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, where she worked for 4 years until 2016. In 2011, she obtained her master's degree in archaeology from Leiden University, and is currently working on her PhD in Egyptian archaeology at the Free University in Berlin. One of Fatma's main career goals is to enhance the links between local communities and their own heritage. So very important work, which thankfully we are chatting more and more about in the field of Egyptology and archaeology at large. Since 2007, she was part of several outreach projects targeting the engagement with the local communities in Sinai, Aswan, in the Western Delta, in Nubia, and in Asyut. Since 2016, she's been working as a consultant for various institutes for the implementation of community engagement-based projects. And in May of last year, she founded her own initiative, which I guess all of you know, called The Place and the People. And this initiative is dedicated to heritage outreach and education services through community engagement. So I will now leave the stage to Fatma and wish you all a great talk. Let's chat afterwards.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I would like to begin my talk by thanking Catherine, Oussama, and Rachel, the organizers of Everyday Orientalism, for inviting me today to inaugurate the series of talks of Everyday Orientalism. And welcome you all around the world. Thanks to all the amazing audience joining us today. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion after the talk. I will start today by introducing our team at The Place and the People. So The Place and the People is our initiative, completely independent initiative, working based in Cairo, Egypt. But thankfully working everywhere in Egypt, as we try to do or hoping to do. We didn't yet go everywhere, but we hope so. My experience is initially being an Egyptologist and a field archaeologist. I had the chance to work at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and other museums as well. I work on community engagement in heritage projects since 2008 already. I tried to co-found a first initiative called Giren in 2017 and 2018, and it was the start to then found the place and the people. Another part of my work is storytelling and being as well a performer. So I'm very grateful to have this experience throughout my career. Now I would like to introduce to you the other very important half of our core team, who is Ashraqat Fakhri, the main facilitator and the coordinator, and who has already, despite her young age, but who has a very rich experience in archaeology, conservation, and as well in community engagement in Egypt, in Asyut, in Isna, and as well in Sudan. And I would like to thank her today for sharing, for controlling the PowerPoint presentation and helping me throughout the preparation, and her excellent work for the place and the people. So next, please. What is our initiative about? What do we offer? We mainly, as I said, we work in the field of community engagement, especially in heritage, since this is our expertise, the field. So we can offer until now consultancy and implementation of heritage outreach and community engagement. We can offer consultancy for archaeological site management, or as well implementation. We offer what we can call TOT, or training people who are interested in the same field to work in the same field or develop their skills in this field. We also work on producing creative and engaging narratives of the historical and archaeological data. Next, please. So until now, since 2018 until present, our work on the ground was in Asyut, in Rashid. Inshallah, soon will be in Mendis and Tel Tamai. We are working on sharing our experience in this field through different occasions, invited by different educational institutions like the Cairo Institute of Liberal Arts and Sciences, like the Cairo Heritage School, the Alexandria World Heritage Simulation Center, the Art d'Egypte Institution. We are trying to offer our consultancy in the field of community engagement and heritage and archaeological projects to our colleagues around the world. Of course, due to the current situation around the world, we are all at home, so our work on the ground unfortunately stopped due to COVID-19, but this didn't stop us to work online. Next, please. And we are very grateful that we launched different, almost 6 or 7, yeah, the titles you see on the slide, for a variety of campaigns where we asked our audience on our Facebook page called The Place and the People to share with us their story at a favorite site in Egypt, their story about a photo about a favorite door, tell us a story about, if they know, share what they know about the Shamsi bread, the Aish Shamsi, your photo at the museum for celebrating the International Museum Day, and different activities. The recent was our online lectures. We are very happy to have already organized 2 successful online lectures throughout the 3 past weeks, and the new will be a series called Egyptology بالعربي, or Egyptology in Arabic, that aims to introduce some of the might be complicated topics in Egyptology in a simplified way to the wider audience. Next, please. So here are just some photos that were shared to us from our dear audience on our Facebook page for various sites in Egypt, the pyramids of Giza, one of the Jewish synagogues in Cairo, one of the Islamic mosques in Fatimid Cairo. And people shared with us with every post and with every photo, they shared the memories and why they think this site is special to them. Next. Here we try to share the knowledge about one of the famous shamsi, one of the famous types of bread, which is the shamsi bread or the aish shamsi, which we believe it is one, of course, of the continuous types of bread since ancient Egypt. And we were really surprised in a good way of the engagement we received around for this campaign from our audience, sharing different photos and knowledge about Aish Shamsi in different areas of Egypt. Next. Here is a selection of photos that we received for doors from Egypt and abroad as well, with their stories and why the people think these doors are special to them and what aspects of heritage do they relate to. Next. Here is the selection of our campaign that we launched especially on the International Museum Day on the 18th of May. And we were so happy of the heavy engagement we received from photos from our audience for museums around Egypt. So we asked them to share photos from Egyptian museums specifically, and it was a wonderful chance to make like a survey to see the richness of museums and the variety of themes that they cover all over Egypt. Next. Here is a selection of our campaigns as well. Our campaign called Hands That Excavated the Civilization that we launched, aiming to raise awareness about the Gufti workmen of archaeological excavation. And this was organized in cooperation with two of our very dear colleagues and friends from the Gufti workmen. Who shared with us the legacy of their fathers and ancestors. And it was a huge chance to share with the wider audience the history and legacy of this important group of professionals who are not very known to the wider audience, or in Egypt or abroad. Our campaign called قطعة أثرية وحكاية, or an object and the story, aimed to invite the audience to imagine the ancient Egyptian objects taking action in today's Egypt. As you see here, we tried to make an example of with the beautiful photo taken by Ashraqat Fakhri, and the object from the ancient Egyptian collection of the British Museum. And we are very thankful to the British Museum for their open access database and for allowing us to use their object in this campaign. And here you see the poster of our recent online lecture about pyramids and golden treasures that aim to introduce the audience to what are the perceptions of Egyptians, of modern day Egyptians, about ancient Egypt through different sources of knowledge, which is part of my ongoing research since 4 years on the heritage knowledge in Egypt. On the right bottom side of the slide, you see our campaign that we will, inshallah, launch next week, Egyptology بالعربي, or Egyptology in Arabic, which will present a series of lectures by Egyptian experts in Arabic language, aiming to introduce the wider audience to a simple presentation of Egyptological topics. Next, please. We were very happy with the feedback we got about our lecture on ancient Egyptian perception of ancient Egypt, and we thank the audience, our very dear audience, who shared their feedback on social media about this lecture. I especially thank Professor Faiza Hekel, my dear professor and mentor, who shared her feedback on Facebook and Twitter. Next, please. Here, I would like to share with you some of the names of independent initiatives and institutions working in Egypt, not necessarily in the field of heritage or archaeology, but in the wider, in very various fields like education, like arts, like music, history, humanities. Yes, one of them is heritage, of course, which is Megawra al-Athar Lana. The aim of including this in my presentation today was to share with you how we situate our initiative among all these independent initiatives working in Egypt with the civil society, trying to engage with the community. This is community engagement in different fields, as I said, which is a very successful field of work since 2011, I would say, after the Egyptian Revolution in 2011. So we see ourselves as the place and the people as part of this as you say, this scene of community engagement in different fields. Next, please. So what I would like to share with you today is what is community engagement in heritage, and why do we believe it's needed in Egypt, and what are the practices from the actual scene, or at least examples. Next. So for me, based on my experience, I would try to give a definition. I'm not, although I'm an academic, I'm not all the time. I don't have a preference all the time to set fixed definitions, but here just to share what I think of community engagement with my dear colleagues and the dear audience today. I think that the community engagement in heritage is the professionals engaging the local communities as an essential active partners in their running projects or their outputs. Next, please. Here, this is I would like to share with you how since I started working in field archaeology since 2007 and later all over these years in different sites in Egypt, I'm very grateful that I got the chance to work in different sites with many important archaeological foreign and Egyptian missions. And here are two different examples from Butu in Kafr al-Sheikh in Western Delta and from Elephantine, who impacted really my thoughts and what I believe about community engagement. So if we look to the photos on the left, we see peasants or people from the region, villagers working in the fields for agriculture. And this was the field of rice, one of the important cultivated items in Kafr al-Sheikh. And the fence you see is the fence separating them from the archaeological site, one of the extremely important archaeological sites of ancient Egypt, Butu or Tell al-Farain. Which has the remains from pre-dynastic until Greco-Roman times and even some Islamic remains. And I wondered, being an archaeologist, a very young archaeologist there, why people do not even think about this incredible heritage existing behind the fence. And from there, I started thinking how we as professionals and archaeologists from Egypt and from abroad, we at this time we rarely shared our knowledge of heritage and archaeology with the wider audience, and we rarely share this with the local communities living in the neighboring sites. And I put the photos of the modern workshops of pottery here, which are located almost 15 kilometers away from the archaeological sites, to show you how this is crucial, because the site of Butu has remains of ancient workshops of pottery from the Greco-Roman times. So there are very obvious links of ancient and modern heritage that I was really surprised that we are not working on bringing on communicating this heritage to the people. In Elephantine, as you can see here, the ancient site is just in the very close vicinity of the modern village. And also from working there for more than 6 years, I wondered how the community should be more aware of this heritage and how to engage them. Next, please. Why community engagement for heritage? Why I think it's important? Because I simply believe that the knowledge is key to everything, and there are a lot of risks and threats threatening the archaeology, the physical risks threatening the archaeology on site, and the local communities are the closest group to the sites to protect these. So they have to be engaged and be aware of this incredible wealth they possess in order to protect it. It's part of the heritage is part of our identity. It's a huge source of cultural continuity, and I very much believe that heritage is one of the pillars of local sustainable development. Next. So where to start? Who is the community? I mean, when we say just the local community, for me, this is a very vague expression. We are 100 million or even more now in Egypt, 100 million person living in Egypt. So, I mean, there are very huge number of groups of people of different backgrounds, of different localities, of different professions. So for me, since I started the heritage knowledge research, I decided to look at the different groups of people. So the groups for me now are the people all over Egypt. If we look to them all over together, or if we decide to look at the local communities living in the close neighborhood of archaeological sites, or the professionals, or the intellectuals like journalists, for example, or authors. And I'm sure if there are more groups, if I go and focus on reviewing these groups as well. There are more groups appearing, of course, and please share with me your ideas about this in the discussion. Next. So the reason why I prefer to look to the people into groups is that every group of these has different source of knowledge of heritage. So who knows what about heritage? I believe there are the sources imposed of knowledge, which are the sources that we get by the governmental education, the inherited knowledge of coming from the collective memory or the shared heritage of one group of local community, the selected knowledge that we decide to go when we decide to go to a museum or read a book or anything. Next. One of the misconceptions of heritage, or especially antiquities, for the wider audience in Egypt, is that people think of archaeology as treasures only, as we are all archaeologists would go to the site and discover the tomb of Tutankhamun like Howard Carter did every day. So they don't know that what we mostly find is broken pottery, and we are so happy when this pottery is, for example, decorated. It's not at all about treasure. So we have a lot of work to do to rearrange these perspectives. Also, I do not blame the people of this perception of treasures, because it's our work as professionals to work on simple narratives to deliver to the people. But all of this is a huge topic of another lecture that I discussed in my recent lecture about pyramids and golden treasures. Next, please. Now I want to go to give an example of this knowledge of some of these groups, and my interest here is to talk about the local communities living in the close vicinity of archaeological sites. I very much believe that heritage for these people is a collective, the part of their collective memory and their shared heritage. I'm sharing this example from one of the projects where I was a field archaeologist and a site management expert, also documented the Arabic graffiti, which is the early Islamic cemetery of Aswan, with one of the hugest, the biggest cemeteries in Egypt from the Islamic period. It is more known as the Fatimid cemetery. And the people bury their families there since the Fatimid times until modern times. And this was a challenge between professionals in the archaeology field, or independent archaeologists, or the official administration represented in the ministry, how to perceive this continuity of burying the deads in an archaeological site. Like the Fatimid cemetery, and where important monuments of important times of Egypt, like the Fatimid times or the Mamluk times, exist there. And where there are mausoleums, symbolic mausoleums of very important religious figures. And to let the people bury their deads or prevent them. And for me, I see this continuity as part of the huge wealth of this cemetery, because this is what kept it alive. So people don't go there only to bury their dead, but they have special symbolism for each of the mausoleums. For each of the mausoleums as well, they have special rituals that they do for example, if a young lady wish to have a baby, she goes in a very specific mausoleum and spread blue powder that we call in Arabic Zahra, aiming for her wish to come true. We have people having symbolic mausoleums for religious figures and people coming to visit. We have graffiti from the 18th century until today of people keeping their memory and their wishes and their prayers on the walls. So it's really hard to separate in this case, but we need to have a different perspective and look at this as a continuity of the heritage and history. Next, please. Here in South Sinai, there is an example of collective memory as well of the people living in Sarabit al-Khadem, where we worked on a documentation project, and where we you cannot climb to see the temple on 800 meter height without having a local guide who inherited this knowledge from his fathers and ancestors. Next, please. And who here we see the photos shared to us in CultNet from the sheikh, the big sheikh of the tribe, and who inherits and gives transfers this knowledge about the archaeology to the younger generations and his children. Next. On Biga Island, there is a different example of collective memory. This is an island located in the reservoir area behind the old Aswan dam. And there are the remains of a very important type of vernacular Nubian architecture. But the village is abandoned. But when we digged for the history of this village, next, we discovered how the people are closely linked to the previously located. This is the previous location of the temple of Philae in Aswan, in the close vicinity of the bigger island, and where the people identified themselves as sometimes as living on the island of Philae, despite them living on a very different island. Next, please. This is a modern photo of to show some of the architectural remains of the old temple on Big Island itself. Next. So how to start? We have to ask ourselves before starting a community engagement project in the heritage field or in the archaeology field, who is the community? Why are we here? Why are we coming here to make community engagement? What is the objective? Next. So we have to do like a small plan. We call it the pre-concept. The pre-concept, we have to ask 3 important questions. Why, for whom, for what? These 3 questions will give us the answers. The purpose of our project, the audience, and the planned outcome. Next. So what are the practices for community engagement in heritage now? These examples that I'm sharing here are based on my very own humble experience in this field. Since 2007 until today, I should have changed to 2020. So I divide them to 3 different categories: or awareness through engagement, or participatory documentation, or heritage and sustainable development. Next. So what is the purpose? Is it awareness, development, or documentation with the community here? I'm talking of community engagement. Who is the audience? The audience can be the kids, the adults, professionals, not professionals, outsiders of the community, insiders, so very varied. Next. The outcome can be very different depending on what we plan for each project and each workshop. Next. Here I would like to share with you our experience in the awareness through engagement. I start by the project of Asyut. Next, please. Oh, Elephantine before Asyut. In 2015 and 2016, the mission of the German Archaeological Institute worked on organizing a school day where we received a group of young students from the local schools of Elephantine, and in partnership with the Ministry of Antiquities, we made a day full of activities introducing them to the heritage and the archaeology of Elephantine. Next. Another example is the German days in Upper Egypt, where we also represented the German Archaeological Institute, and we wanted to introduce the idea of heritage in ancient Egypt through different activities with kids, but also we were very happy to see adults from very different backgrounds, as you see in the photos, engaged in our activities and writing their names in hieroglyphs and in hieratic even. Next. Here I go to the very important example in our work, which is our involvement in the Asyut region project of the British Museum, directed by Dr. Ilona Rigulski, and where I'm very grateful to Ilona to have invited me to join this very interesting project. And in the first place, an archaeological excavation, but with the very first one of them, its main aim is to engage the local community in the work. So I'm very grateful that I got the chance to organize 5 different workshops here in Asyut, in the village of Shud, of very different backgrounds, of very different themes. The first workshop, we introduced the group of young audience to the modern architectural heritage of their village, with some activities about ancient Egypt as well. Next. Another workshop that happened in parallel to the first workshop in October 2017 was the storytelling about based on the original story of the eloquent peasant and on the Arabic Egyptian modern Egyptian version of the story written by Baha Jahin, the Egyptian poet. And so the kids were told the story from the professional storyteller Ahmed Shukri, who introduced them to the storytelling techniques and also introduced them to why the story is an important ancient Egyptian heritage. And also they performed the story as a theater play, and they produced, next please, they produced very beautiful comics and drawings based on this story. Next. Here, another workshop that I enjoyed very much was how to make a flyer for the heritage of your village, with the group of 15 young participants from the village of Shud, where we exchange different narratives about the local heritage of Shud. Why do they know, and why do we know? And we shared this narrative to produce handmade flyers about this heritage. Next. A first workshop was inviting the kids to draw a graffiti in the community center of the village, graffiti inspired from their local architectural heritage. And it was one of the very difficult but the very fun also workshops. We had more than 40 kids participating, although we had only the capacity of 30, but the enthusiasm of the kids was incredible, which made us really happy. Next. This project, the Asyut Region project of the British Museum, included a lot of community engagement activities done by us, myself and Ashrakat and our dear colleagues, but it was done also by other teams like the Cairo Urban Sketchers, like the team of Takween. Please check the website of the Asyut Region project to read all details of the reports, to download the card game developed by Ilona Rigulski, Hiba Abdelgawad, and Hiba Shama, my very dear colleagues, about the history of Asyut. And also you can download, next please, the tale of Shud that we wrote specially about the heritage and the history of the village. And we were very happy to receive an award from the House of Egyptian Architecture, and from the House of Egyptian Architecture is affiliated to the Egyptian Ministry of Culture, and we received a special cheerleading award in January 2020. We were also received by Dar el Balsam, the leading print house of children books, to celebrate the publication of The Tale of Shud. The Tale of Shud was distributed by the archaeologists and by the director of the project to the kids of the village some months ago, whom were very happy to receive it. You can also download the story from the website I just mentioned, in Arabic and in English. Next. Another workshop very dear to us is our work in Rashid, together with the Robert Bosch Foundation, the Goethe Institute in Cairo, and the Ministry of Antiquities, the local representatives of the Ministry of Antiquities. We organized two different workshops with the young audience, with 40 participants, and the second workshop with the youth from Rashid and from another surrounding Northern Delta region. Next. For the young audience, it was the 4 days workshop. We introduced them to the different heritage spots in Rashid, one of the most important Islamic towns of Egypt. Also the discovery spot of the famous Rosetta Stone. We took them to field trips to the local museum. We introduced them to different aspects of why why the wealth of their heritage is appreciated by the whole world and what do they think about it. And we introduced them also to the local crafts, the intangible heritage of their village by two local artists. And over 4 days, they worked on next, please, on producing each handmade flyer about the heritage of their town. Next. For the second workshop, we got a very engaged group of young people from Rashid and from around Rashid, the different cities of the Northern Delta, who worked on exploring the heritage of Rashid by field trips for like, I think we did at least 5 different field trips for the church, for the citadel, for the museum, for the old houses of Rashid. They received a lot of sessions from us, from professionals, from our colleagues in the Ministry of Antiquities, and they worked on they worked in groups on different projects as outcomes. Next. They produced stories, movies. They produced also very important assets for the heritage of Rashid, which are routes of visits. So they toured the streets of Rashid. They made interviews with the people to know what are their perceptions of their local heritage, and they used this data in producing creative suggested routes of visits for future visitors, and all these outcomes were exchanged with the local representatives of the Ministry of Antiquities in order to implement them and make use of them in the heritage. Okay, I will move now to the next slide. The participatory documentation is the project that I just mentioned on the island of Biga, where we worked on the documentation of the vernacular architecture of the village and as well of all aspects of local life on this village. And we could not have done it without the engagement of the local people and their participation in the documentation, because they had to explain to us the meaning of each item and what it did in their daily life and what are their meanings. Next. Another aspect of community engagement is what we did in Sarabit al-Khadim in South Sinai. What I mentioned earlier is to build a visitor center called Beit Hathor, or the House of Hathor, and where we employed people from the local community to make it a visitor center about the ancient heritage of Sarabit al-Khadim. Next. The community engagement can have the aspect of development also, like this example of the adaptive reuse workshop in 2016, where I was very lucky to participate, and we had to include all these components to engage the local community, because the local community in Fatimid Cairo is huge. So we had to think of social and cultural events, of economic sustainability, of urban empowerment. Next, please. So as you can assume from my presentation of our examples of our work, it's not only a workshop, it's a lot of preparation, it's a site visit, it's a cooperation with different institutions, it's preparation of material, of schedule, of research, the workshop itself, engaging the people, evaluation, learning from the experience, building on it, writing the report. Next. And sharing our experience as well. We're very happy that we had the chance to engage in training programs of heritage professionals in the Library of Alexandria, in the Cairo Heritage School, at Helwan University, at the French University in Egypt, and different institutions. Thank you so much for having me today. I would like to thank Catherine, Osama, and Rachel for inviting me to inaugurate the important series. And please, we want to hear from you on our communication channels.
Thank you so much, Fatma. It was a very stimulating talk, and I'm sure there are many questions. I'm gonna keep an eye on the questions on the chat.
Thank you.
Maybe I will start. I will break the ice by asking you a question. So what really strikes me in all the projects you've described is this idea of memory and also of affect, and how there is a very emotional link that can be had between people and the landscape and the heritage. And
there is what? Sorry, Catherine?
An affective, an emotional relationship to a place. And I was just curious as to some of the reactions of the audiences you've been working with when they started diving deeper and learning more about certain aspects of their heritage that maybe they were not aware of before.
Yeah, thank you for this very thought-provoking question, Catherine. Well, I have to tell you that we had very different, or at least myself, I had very different experiences in each site I worked on. So that's why the perspective was different in each site as well. And it depends on the relation, the current relation of the people with the archaeology and the heritage. Like in Sinai, for example, this is one of the major resources of their income, is to receive the guests and to get them around the temple and the ancient Egyptian remains and to explain to them. That's why they see it as like a pillar of their life already. And this was a very striking experience for me, because I didn't expect this as a very young archaeologist at the time, thinking that us archaeologists, we know everything. Of course, yeah, we know many things, of course, because we spend a lot of time studying this. But the local people as well has this different meaning and different value for the local heritage. So that's why, as you said, it gets very emotional sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of the meeting of two different kind of types of knowledge, and it's a very humbling and important experience, I think, for all of us who work in archaeology, history, and heritage. Thank you. So there are a lot of questions.
I'm going to go answer.
So Lisa Randisi asked, do you evaluate the impact that these community engagement activities have further down the line? If so, how, and what has the impact been?
The impact of our community engagement, this is the question?
Yeah, it's in the chat if ever you want to look at
it.
So how do you evaluate the impact, and if you did, what impact have you noticed?
Okay, so we have different cases. So after each workshop with the local community, we make an evaluation with them, or through very simple questions on a sheet individually, or through a collective discussion with the participants. So we, the most common, maybe this is one of the things that is very common in all the workshops, is the attachment and the increased attachment. So they in Shudb, for example, in Asyut, they decided to, some of the participants, we worked on a handmade flyer of the heritage, for example, for 4 days, and we left back in Cairo or in London or to our cities. We come back a month or a week later, and we find two of them writing more about writing like a small, not a flyer this time, but I would call it a small university essay about the local heritage or another aspect of history of Asyut or of the village of Shud. So so this kind of impact, very positive for the we received some messages when we published the story of Shud, of people from the village, originally from the village, but living abroad, for example, not even in Egypt, and telling to us, I'm originally from Shud, please tell me how can I get this book. I'm so happy you wrote about my village, and so on. So very different, but the most common is the attachment and the pride, if we can say.
Thank you. So next question by Jen Tum. Or Tom, I'm sorry, Jen, if I mispronounce your family name. What can other Egyptologists do to support your initiatives? Are there tangible actions we can take to contribute to your efforts?
Oh, thank you so much, Jen, for this question. Well, we welcome all types of support, of course. Tangible support from Egyptologists can be, for example, I will give examples. Participating in our lecture in our online lecture series, for example, to share the knowledge to a wider audience, not to only to specialists, to help us. If we have to do undertake a research about a specific site, for example, maybe in the future we can create like a database of experts for each field of heritage, so we can easily make sure of the historical information and how to say, adapt it to a simple narrative to our participants or our audience. So very different types of participation. We didn't specifically think about it, but thank you so much for this. We will consider it and think more about it.
Great. Another question from Charlotte Parent. She's wondering, how do you think the Egyptian diaspora could be involved in community engagements projects in museums outside of Egypt? We have one here in Toronto. There's a Coptic museum in Toronto. So is this type of engagement beyond Egypt among the diaspora, is this something you've been thinking about?
Not yet, but thank you for the suggestion. Yeah, I mean, there are many things to be done, like, for example, sharing with us the history, not the history, but at least the knowledge of the local museum they have in their in the city they live at the moment. Like, as you said, the Coptic Museum of Toronto, or other examples around the world, in the UK, around Europe, around the US. There are a lot of ancient Egyptian collections. They can help us to know more about these collections, for example.
Wonderful. Fatma, are you still with us? You first. I will ask the next question. Hopefully you can hear us. Daniel is asking if you've been facing some practical difficulties throughout your years working with community engagement, and if you want to say more about these difficulties and how you've overcome them. Are you still there, Fatma? Oh, I think there's been a little. Fatma is back. Wonderful. Okay. I just need your microphone. You're muted. I don't know if I can unmute you.
Hello?
Oh, yes, you're here. Okay, I hear you. Wonderful. Okay, did you hear my question? I mean, maybe you were.
No, unfortunately, I didn't hear the question. So.
Okay, so it's a question from Daniel who's asking about the difficulties you've been facing. If there are some practical difficulties you want to talk about and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, there are some difficulties, of course. Life is not pink, as we see, as we can say. But we prefer to call them challenges. For example, getting the official permissions. For example, it's not always easy to get an official permission from. We have to get it from a local administration, not because the people don't want to cooperate.
Yeah.
But more because the people don't know about our work enough. So our work is still new for many people, for many institutions, and they need to know more about it. So at first they might tell us, no, you're not allowed to make a community engagement workshop with the local community, for example. But then when they know more about our objectives, who we are, how can we cooperate, helping them in different aspects of their work where we can help. So yeah, this is one of the most common challenges, the local permissions.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, I mean, it didn't stop us. I mean, we could find ways to solve these challenges. And in most of our workshops, people have been extremely cooperative. Thanks God.
Alhamdulillah, as you say.
Exactly.
Another question by Shatabu Rafaja, who says, I particularly liked how you see graffiti as part of people's engagement, but the question is about something else. So have you had the chance to examine what people think about their representation by early Western Egyptologists in the 19th and early 20th century, whether in photos, mundane workers, or in related literature, as ignorance of the importance of their past? If not, do you think it is important to approach this issue in your initiative?
Thank you for the very interesting question. We didn't talk specifically about this aspect in any of our workshops or projects, but yeah, I think it's an important question, of course. Maybe it's not, at the moment, it's not one of our priorities, not because it's not important, but because we need to research. I need, as a professional, to read more about this aspect. And to know what and how, what do we want to ask the people first, and how, because we do not want to be offensive, of course. We do not want to be to ask them the question as a problem. We are working our best to make a positive impact. To give the people the positive image first, and then get them involved in more complicated issues of our field.
Yeah, which is a wise way to operate.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Claire Panetta asked a question, but I think you responded to it while responding to Daniel's question. So if you don't mind me, Claire, I will just jump, because I guess you've had a response by now. And we'll end with, no problem, thank you. And we'll end with Gil Ekichi or Ekisi's question. Once again, my apologies if I mispronounce your name. I wonder how receptive are the village elders to the children learning about their ancient Egyptian heritage, particularly in small villages not close to archaeological sites?
Well, we had two different experiences. One in the village of Shud, as I said, the main village of the Asyut project of the British Museum, where people, the adults, the parents, let's say, were extremely encouraging the kids to the degree that some of them attended the workshops with us. Of course, we were so happy and very welcoming them. It was just the idea of the capacity of the physical space of the room we had, so we didn't have the chance to welcome them all, but some of them participated nevertheless. In another case, and also in Asyut, but in a village. Where there is no archaeology or in the village or in the close vicinity, called Beni Mor. We had a very different response. Also, kids were, how to say, encouraged and supported by their parents to attend. We didn't have specifically parents attending this workshop, but we could see this in the huge number of kids over 3 days. But we could notice the different perspective. When you ask the kids of what is heritage for you, they draw the pyramids of Giza, although they are in Asyut. Whereas when we were in Shud, when you ask them about heritage, they know that in the bottom of their houses there is ancient heritage. So this was very striking to us.
Yeah, this is fascinating. But I mean, overall, it really seems like there is a demand and there is an interest.
Yes,
it's about meeting people where they are, both physically and culturally as well.
Exactly, and we were so happy also from a different aspect that the parents were like were giving us confidence, although they didn't meet us before. I mean, they were happy that we are offering a different learning experience for their kids. So we were very much happy about this aspect.
Well, I think I can say like them that everyone who's been listening to you, are very grateful and happy to have learned more about what you've been doing and how we in our own scholarly practice can hopefully help you, support you, and contribute you and other colleagues who do work in terms of community engagement in Egypt and beyond. So really, thank you so much for this series. And so if anyone wants to learn more about Fatma's work and other projects, she's put together a list of further readings, which is on the blog Everyday Orientalism, so on the page where we advertise the talk. As I've said, we'll put the YouTube video online in the course of next week. And in case you're interested, we're having our second Everyday Orientalism talks on July 29th. So Girish Daswani will talk about the whiteness of academia. You all have a good day, a good night, a good sleep.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Captain. Bye.
Thank you, Fatma.